Imagine this, you're on a dream vacation. The sun is shining, the ocean is sparkling, and the world feels full of possibilities. But what if, in the blink of an eye, that dream turned into a nightmare? What if the person you trusted most, the one you laughed with, shared secrets with, and called a friend, was hiding a deadly secret? A secret so dark, so twisted, that it would cost you your life. This is the story of 24-year-old Emily Carter, a vibrant nurse from Chicago. She was the kind of person who lit up every room she walked into. Her friends called her the glue of their group, always there with a smile, a joke, or a shoulder to cry on. She had her whole life ahead of her, a promising career, a loving family, and a boyfriend she planned to marry. But in March 2024, during what was supposed to be a fun weekend getaway to Miami, Emily vanished without a trace. At first, it seemed like a simple missing persons case. But as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a web of lies, betrayal, and greed. The last person to see Emily alive was her best friend, Sarah Miller. But Sarah's story didn't add up. And then there was Jason Blake, a charming fitness trainer with a dark past. Together, they would become the center of a chilling investigation that would reveal a plot so cold, so calculated, it would shock even the most seasoned detectives. What started as a simple trip to Miami would end in tragedy. A life cut short, a friendship shattered, and a secret so horrifying it would leave an entire city asking one question: how could this happen? This is the story of betrayal, greed, and a deadly plan that went horribly wrong. This is the story of Emily Carter. Welcome to Crime Storyteller, a place where we unravel the darkest mysteries, piece together the most chilling crimes, and uncover the truth behind the headlines. Tonight, we bring you a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust, friendship, and the lengths some will go to for greed. Emily Carter was more than just a name in a missing persons report. She was a 24-year-old nurse, known for her kindness, her dedication to her patients, and her ability to light up any room she walked into. To her friends, she was the life of the party, always ready with a smile, a joke, or a shoulder to cry on. To her family, she was the glue that held them together, a daughter, a sister, and a friend who could always be counted on. Emily had recently moved to Chicago to start her nursing career. It was a dream she had worked toward for years, and she was finally living it. Her colleagues described her as someone who went above and beyond for her patients, often staying late to ensure they were comfortable and cared for. She had a natural ability to make people feel seen and heard, even on their worst days. Emily's life wasn't just about her career. She was deeply loved by her family, especially her younger brother, who looked up to her as a role model. And then there was Daniel, her boyfriend of 2 years. They had met in nursing school and quickly became inseparable. Friends often joked that they were the couple everyone wanted to be. Emily and Daniel had plans, big plans. They were saving for a house, talking about marriage, and dreaming of a future filled with love and laughter. In March 2024, Emily decided to take a short trip to Miami with her best friend, Sarah Miller. It was meant to be a chance to unwind after a stressful few months at work. Miami was one of Emily's favorite places, a city full of life, energy, and endless possibilities. She had been looking forward to the trip for weeks, counting down the days. But what started as a fun getaway would soon turn into a nightmare that no one could have predicted. Emily was the kind of person who always checked in with her family. She would text her mom every morning and call Daniel every night. But on March 16, 2024, the texts stopped. The calls stopped, and Emily's family knew something was terribly wrong. Emily Carter wasn't the kind of person to disappear. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't careless. She was a young woman with a bright future, a loving family, and a life full of promise. But in the blink of an eye, that life was taken from her. And as her family would soon discover, the truth behind her disappearance was more horrifying than they could have ever imagined. On March 15th, 2024, Emily Carter and her best friend, Sarah Miller, arrived in Miami. It was a trip they had been planning for months, a chance to escape the cold Chicago winter and soak up the sun in one of the most vibrant cities in the world. The first day was everything they had hoped for. They spent hours on the beach, laughing, taking photos, and making memories. That evening, they explored the city's famous nightlife, dancing at a popular club and enjoying the energy of Miami after dark. But on the evening of March 16th, something went terribly wrong. What started as a fun night out would end in a mystery that would haunt everyone who knew Emily. Emily and Sarah were last seen together at a nightclub in downtown Miami. Surveillance footage from that night shows them laughing, dancing, and enjoying themselves. But around 1 a.m., something changed. The footage captures them leaving the club together, heading toward a nearby convenience store. They were seen entering the store, but what happened next remains a mystery. Emily never made it back to the hotel. Her phone, which had been sharing her location with her family, last pinged near a remote area outside the city, a place she had no reason to be. By the next morning, Sarah returned to the hotel alone. When questioned, she claimed she had no idea where Emily was. She said they had gotten separated at the club, and she assumed Emily had gone back to the hotel on her own. But investigators weren't convinced. Something about Sarah's story didn't add up. Why would Emily, who was always so careful and responsible, wander off alone in the middle of the night? Why hadn't she called or texted anyone? And why did her phone ping in a remote area, far from the hotel or any place she would have gone willingly? Emily's family knew something was wrong. She had left everything behind, her purse, her phone, her debit cards. It was completely out of character for her to disappear without a trace. By the morning of March 17th, they reported her missing. What followed was a frantic search that would uncover more questions than answers. As investigators began piecing together the events of that night, they discovered something chilling. Surveillance footage from the convenience store showed Emily and Sarah leaving together, but there was no sign of Emily after that. Witnesses reported seeing a car parked nearby, its engine running, as if waiting for someone. And then there was Sarah, calm, collected, but with a story that seemed to change every time she told it. By the next morning, Sarah claimed she had no idea where Emily was. But investigators weren't convinced. Something about Sarah's story didn't add up. And as they dug deeper, they would uncover a web of lies, betrayal, and a secret so dark it would shock everyone who thought they knew the truth. When Emily's family reported her missing on March 17, 2024, police immediately suspected foul play. Emily wasn't the kind of person to disappear without a trace. She had left everything behind, her purse, her phone, her debit cards. It was clear she hadn't planned to vanish. And as investigators began to piece together the events of that night, they uncovered a chilling truth. Emily Carter hadn't just disappeared. She had been taken. The first person investigators turned to was Sarah Miller, Emily's best friend and travel companion. Sarah had been the last person to see Emily alive, and her story was the key to unlocking the mystery. But from the very beginning, something about Sarah's account didn't add up. She claimed she and Emily had gotten separated at the nightclub, and she assumed Emily had gone back to the hotel on her own. But surveillance footage told a different story. The footage showed Emily and Sarah leaving the club together and entering a nearby convenience store. But after that, Emily was never seen again. Sarah, however, returned to the hotel alone. When questioned, she was calm, almost too calm. And as investigators dug deeper, they began to suspect that Sarah knew more than she was letting on. Sarah Miller wasn't just a person of interest, she was the prime suspect. But as investigators delved into her background, they uncovered another name, Jason Blake, a 30-year-old fitness trainer with a criminal past. Jason had a history of fraud and had been involved in several shady business deals. He was also Sarah's ex-boyfriend, and their relationship had ended on anything but good terms. Jason Blake was no stranger to trouble. He had a reputation for being charming and manipulative, with a knack for getting people to do what he wanted. But beneath that charm was a darker side, a side that had landed him in legal trouble more than once. And as investigators soon discovered, Jason had a connection to Emily that went deeper than anyone realized. The breakthrough in the case came when investigators uncovered a series of text messages between Sarah and Jason. The messages were chilling, to say the least. They revealed a plot so cold, so calculated, it sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned detectives. In the messages, Sarah and Jason discussed Emily's life insurance policy, a policy worth $500,000. They talked about how to make her death look like an accident, how to cover their tracks, and how to split the money. It was a plan born out of greed and desperation, and it was a plan they were determined to carry out. Emily had taken out the policy just weeks before the trip, at Sarah's urging. Sarah had convinced her it was a smart financial move, a way to protect her future. But in reality, it was the key to a deadly plot, a plot that would end in tragedy. Narrator, voice grows more intense. As investigators pieced together the evidence, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Sarah and Jason had conspired to kill Emily, using her life insurance policy as their motive. They had lured her to Miami under the guise of a fun getaway, but in reality, it was a trap that Emily never saw coming. On March 20th, 2024, Sarah Miller was arrested. She was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. But the investigation was far from over. Jason Blake was still out there, and investigators were determined to bring him to justice. 2 days later, Jason Blake was apprehended in Sacramento, California. He had been trying to flee the state, but the FBI caught up with him. When questioned, Jason confessed to his role in the plot, revealing the horrifying details of what had happened to Emily Carter. What started as a fun weekend getaway in Miami would end in a nightmare. Emily Carter had no idea that the people she trusted most, her best friend, Sarah Miller, and Sarah's ex-boyfriend, Jason Blake, were plotting her murder. But as investigators would soon uncover, the plan to kill Emily was cold, calculated, and months in the making. It all began with a life insurance policy. Just weeks before the trip, Sarah had convinced Emily to take out a $500,000 policy. She told Emily it was a smart financial move, a way to protect her future. But in reality, it was the key to a sinister plan, a plan that would end in Emily's death. Emily trusted Sarah. She had no reason to suspect that her best friend was plotting against her. But behind the scenes, Sarah and Jason were already discussing how to make Emily's death look like an accident. They talked about it in text messages, in phone calls, and in person. It was a plan born out of greed and desperation, a plan they were determined to carry out. On the night of March 16th, 2024, Sarah and Jason put their plan into action. They lured Emily to a secluded area under the guise of showing her a secret beach. It was a place Emily had never been before, a place far from the bustling streets of Miami. She had no reason to suspect that this would be the last night of her life. When they arrived at the secluded spot, Jason parked the car and turned off the engine. Emily was still laughing, still unaware of the danger she was in. But then, everything changed. Jason grabbed a rope from the trunk and, without warning, wrapped it around Emily's neck. Sarah watched as Emily struggled, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Emily fought for her life, but it was no use. Jason was too strong, and Sarah did nothing to stop him. Within minutes, Emily was gone. Her lifeless body slumped in the back seat of the car, her dreams, her future, her life, all snuffed out in an instant. But the horror didn't end there. Sarah and Jason knew they had to get rid of the body. They drove to a remote, swampy area outside the city, a place where they thought no one would ever find her. They dragged Emily's body into the swamp, covering it with branches and mud, hoping it would never be discovered. The $500,000 insurance payout was the driving force behind the crime. Sarah and Jason planned to split the money, believing they could get away with murder. They thought they had covered their tracks, thought they had committed the perfect crime. But they were wrong. What Sarah and Jason didn't realize was that their plan was far from perfect. Investigators would soon uncover the truth, piece by piece, until the full extent of their betrayal was revealed. But for Emily, it was too late. Her life had been taken, her future stolen, all for the sake of greed. This was not a crime of passion. This was not a moment of madness. This was a cold, calculated act of betrayal. A betrayal that would leave an entire community in shock and a family shattered forever. The disappearance of Emily Carter had left her family and friends in a state of unbearable anguish. But as the investigation unfolded, hope began to emerge, hope that those responsible would be brought to justice. And on March 20th, 2024, that hope became a reality. Sarah Miller, Emily's best friend and travel companion, was the first to be arrested. Investigators had uncovered inconsistencies in her story, and the text messages between her and Jason Blake were the smoking gun that sealed her fate. When confronted with the evidence, Sarah's calm demeanor crumbled. She was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. But Sarah wasn't the only one involved. Jason Blake, her ex-boyfriend and co-conspirator, was still on the run. Investigators knew he was the key to unraveling the full extent of the plot. And 2 days later, on March 22nd, 2024, they caught up with him. Jason had been trying to flee the state, but the FBI tracked him down in Orlando. When he was apprehended, he was carrying a bag filled with cash and a one-way ticket to Mexico. It was clear he had been planning to disappear forever. But justice had other plans. With both suspects in custody, the legal proceedings began. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Text messages, GPS data, and witness testimonies painted a chilling picture of premeditated murder. The $500,000 life insurance policy, which had been the motive for the crime, became a central piece of evidence in the trial. During the trial, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence. They showed how Sarah and Jason had planned the murder for months, how they had lured Emily to Miami under false pretenses, and how they had carried out the crime with cold, calculated precision. The defense tried to argue that there was no direct evidence linking Jason to the murder, but the jury wasn't convinced. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Sarah Miller and Jason Blake were found guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. The judge sentenced them both to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Emily's family, the verdict was a bittersweet moment. They knew it wouldn't bring Emily back, but it was a measure of justice for the daughter, sister, and friend they had lost. Emily's mother spoke to the press after the trial, her voice trembling with emotion. Emily was our light. She was the kind of person who made everyone around her better. Her killers may have taken her life, but they can never take her spirit. We will carry her memory with us every day, and we will never stop fighting for justice in her name. The arrests and convictions of Sarah Miller and Jason Blake brought a sense of closure to Emily's family and friends. But the pain of losing her will never fully go away. Emily's story is a reminder of the devastating effects of greed and betrayal, and of the importance of seeking justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. The story of Emily Carter is more than just a tragic tale of betrayal and murder. It's a stark reminder of the darker side of human nature, a side driven by greed, manipulation, and the willingness to harm others for personal gain. But it's also a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. This tragedy sheds light on the dangers of greed and betrayal. It shows us how easily trust can be exploited, how quickly a friendship can turn deadly, and how far some people are willing to go for money. Emily trusted Sarah Miller, her best friend, with her life. But that trust was shattered in the most horrifying way possible. It's a chilling reminder to be cautious about who we trust, especially when money is involved. Emily's story is not an isolated incident. Across the world, countless lives have been destroyed by greed, manipulation, and betrayal. And while we can't always prevent these tragedies, we can learn from them. We can be more vigilant, more aware, and more protective of ourselves and our loved ones. Emily's story also reminds us to cherish the people we love, to hold them close, to tell them how much they mean to us, and to never take a single moment for granted. because life is fragile and it can be taken away in an instant. Emily Carter was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a bright light in the lives of everyone who knew her. Her loss has left an irreplaceable void, but her memory lives on. And by sharing her story, we honor her life and ensure that she is never forgotten. Let Emily's story be a call to action, a reminder to be vigilant, to protect ourselves and our loved ones, and to stand up against greed and betrayal wherever we see it. Let it inspire us to be kinder, more compassionate, and more aware of the people around us. Because in the end, it's not just about justice for Emily. It's about creating a world where stories like hers don't have to happen. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May Emily's story remind us all to cherish the ones we love, to be vigilant in protecting ourselves, and to never stop fighting for a world where trust is sacred and greed has no place. As we come to the end of Emily Carter's story, our hearts go out to her family and friends. Emily's loss is a painful reminder of how precious life is, and how quickly it can be taken away. Her kindness, her laughter, and her bright spirit will never be forgotten. To her loved ones, we offer our deepest condolences. May you find strength in the memories you shared and comfort in knowing that Emily's story has touched so many lives. Emily's story is a call to all of us, to cherish the people we love, to be vigilant in protecting ourselves, and to never take a single moment for granted. It's a reminder that trust is sacred, and that greed and betrayal can have devastating consequences. But it's also a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is hope. Hope for justice, hope for healing, and hope for a better tomorrow. If you found Emily's story compelling, please consider subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you'll join a community of true crime enthusiasts who are dedicated to uncovering the truth, seeking justice, and honoring the memories of those we've lost. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share it with others who might find it meaningful. Thank you for watching. Stories like Emily's remind us of the importance of staying informed, staying vigilant, and staying connected. Together, we can honor the memories of those we've lost and work toward a world where such tragedies are a thing of the past. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.